So most of you guys know that tournaments recently did start back up again. The first tournament of the season was the Trio Cash Cup that happened on Monday. And if you guys are unaware, recently I have found a trio that I'm going to be playing with this season, and we have started scrimming and practicing for Cash Cups in tournaments this season. And in today's video, I'm going to be going over what I learned from this Trio Cash Cup and how I'd recommend you guys to play in the upcoming Trio Cash Cups. There was a large gap of time in between last season and this season, and I'm going to be teaching you guys all of the good techniques that you need to do after the meta has shifted. Be sure to use code SonataYT if you guys do want to support me in the Fortnite item shop. But let's get into this video. So the first big thing that I learned about exactly how to play in this Trio Cash Cup was from our final game of the Cash Cup. So up to this final game, we weren't doing necessarily well. We had around 79 to 80 points, and we weren't performing at the caliber that we wanted to. Our trio set a goal of around 100 to 110 points of a point threshold for the Cash Cup. And obviously, I know that's not great, but this is our first event that we have played together, and we wanted to try to set a bar that we can most likely reach. So we weren't doing necessarily well going into this final game, and we wanted to see if we could try and win the game, and I suggested that we try and play height. So as you guys know, I am the IGL of this trio, and most of the times I like to try is to have us play low ground. The reason I have us play low ground is it's a little bit more safe than high ground, and it's more accessible to most trios. I like to have us position on mid ground during the 4th and 5th zones, and then once it starts getting into the moving zones, I try to have us drop down to low ground and play from there for the rest of the end game. This is the technique that I use with our trio a lot, and I recommend that if you guys are really unsure about playing high ground, you consider playing low ground or some mid ground layer. Alright, so getting back into it, we weren't really doing the best with playing low ground throughout the rest of the tournament, so I decided that we should try and play height this game and see how we do. So basically what happened is that we were able to rotate through mid ground for the first half of the moving zones, and eventually we got a refresh that gave us a launch pad. I told my trio mate to place the launch pad down so that we could pad for height, and we padded on height and immediately got it. So what we did basically is we did a 3-layer height play. Basically, it's where one member of the trio stays very high and the other 2 members stay at different layers in order to fight people down below. I was the one who was staying up really high because I'm an IGL and I'm not really much of a fragger. However, my teammates Gavvo and Griff both dropped down to try and look for some more eliminations. And then eventually, after they racked up a ton of eliminations, we ended up winning this game. And we got our points up to about 108 and met our goal. Now this was a really good win for the Cash Cup. It brought our points up very high, but I would like to stress one fact that is huge. In these Cash Cups, height is key. If you get height, most of the time you're going to win the game. However, I want to advise you guys with some caution. Don't take height too early because it's possible that you can get jumped if you take height too early. Somebody can just pad up onto your high ground if you're not playing it correctly and then steal it from you, and you're going to be scuffed for the rest of the end game. It's important that you guys properly play height in the way that you can stay together and make sure nobody else can take it from you. I would also recommend that you try to stay ahead if you have high ground. This is going to help you get more eliminations by spraying down with your AR, and it's also going to help you keep track of zone a lot better. So that was the first big thing that I've learned, but the second is arguably more important. The second thing that I learned is that you should focus on rotations rather than keying in all of your games and play all of your games out for the win. Now you guys might have watched some EU and NA Cash Cups where all the pros will go into their first game W keying the lobby, and while this is a good technique if you're a professional player, if you're somebody who's not a pro player like me, you're not going to want to try this your first game. People who play these Cash Cups are actually good at the video game, and you don't really want to try and get high elimination wins on these opponents unless you're very good at W keying. Which is why I would recommend that you play your first game and all of the rest of your games out for the win if you're at a level like mine. The only time I would ever recommend W keying very hard your first game is if you are very, very good at keying and your trio has specifically studied the best way to do that. Now don't get me wrong, there are no issues with W keying your first game, it's just the issue that if you die with no kills, it's a really bad first game. You always want to make sure that your first game at least gets a couple of points, and if it doesn't, you want to try to recuperate in your second game and then earn back those points. If you play all of your games out for the win, you're going to be getting a lot more placement points than normal. I believe in total the amount of placement points that you can get per game is around 25. If you can get all of these 25 placement points per game, you should be chilling in terms of points for pretty much the entire Cash Cup. It's better to play placement than W key is what I'm trying to say. However, if you can find a nice medium between both, that is the best case scenario. I especially admire people like Degen, Agers, and Skittles in the way that they played. Essentially what they did is they were able to W key and get high placement games and then earn up the amount of points to place on both EU and NA. So now going into the third thing that I learned from this Cash Cup is that no matter how scuffed your team is, you can always come back from it. In our final game that we did end up winning by taking high ground, we were very scuffed going into the mid game. Our teammate Griff was dead, so we had to go reboot him near Craggy Cliffs. As you guys know, we do land the alien outpost split and we wanted to try to go over to Craggy Cliffs and reboot him. So we had to circle the entire map and then get over to Craggy. However, the team in Craggy wasn't leaving. So we we had to patiently wait in storm and heal until we could get in and reboot. After rebooting, we were able to split our teammate mats and then get up the mountain. However, after this point, we weren't necessarily good on loot or mats or anything. We were still pretty scuffed. What we had to do is cross the map until we could get to a campfire and then heal up with that as zone was closing in. We then had to outrun zone and get into the Pleasant Park area and then base up for the endgame. So basically the point of what I learned from this is that no matter how scuffed the team is, you can always come back from it as long as you play in the right way. Don't push stupid fights, especially if you're a duo, and try to focus on your teammates' reboot if you can. It's always better to have 3 players than 1, especially during an endgame. Alright, so the fourth thing that I learned from this Cash Cup is that you should try to keep the comms clear and try to focus more on the gameplay rather than talk unnecessarily. Now this is going out to primarily all of my IGLs out there. Never try to keep the comms flooded. If you talk too much or if anybody on your team talks too much, it's going to make the team panic a little bit more. It's going to make them think about more things that they don't necessarily need to think about in the moment. If you talk a lot less, it's going to help keep the team calm and it helps them stay together. Especially during the endgame where there's so much extra noise outside of the area, it's going to help keep your team's nerves down and make them listen to you a lot more if you talk less and in a calm tone. In this Cash Cup, I tried to prioritize talking in a calm tone to my team, and then during a lot of the endgames, we did a lot better. Even if someone is panicking, you can always calm them down by telling them to physically calm down. This is one of the most important attributes of any IGL or basically any teammate of any trio that you can find. You want to try to keep people calm during the game. Okay, so the fifth and final thing that I learned from playing this trio Cash Cup was that if you are being W keyed, don't run away from it, fight unless you have a launch pad. So I just said a lot of words right there, and I want to basically summarize it with this sentence. If you are being keyed, just fight the team that you're being keyed by. 9 times out of 10, if you run, you're going to be getting more scuffed with the team chasing you, rather than if you stand there and fight against that team. You need to be confident in your trio's fighting ability, and you need to be confident in their ability to hold their own. Now, if you're fighting a team that's very clearly better than you, don't worry about it. Just try to fight to the best of your ability, and if you die, you die. You're getting better at the game every day. The only exception to this, like I said before, would be if you have a launch pad. If you have a launch pad, try to pad away, and then make sure that you attempt to break the pad after you are done. However, if you can break the pad and that enemy team is trying to follow you, you should try to beam them out of the air if you can. This is one of the best attributes of any team play that I have ever seen. And if you can do this, it's 9 times out of 10 going to help you succeed in most of these mid-game fights where those brain-dead W keyers are pushing you. And then also on the receiving end of that, don't necessarily do brain-dead W key plays. That's not necessarily a smart technique. And if you are able to follow these specific tips, you should be good for the Trio Cash Cups. Alright guys, those are my tips for the Trio Cash Cups and what I learned from playing with my teammates Griff and Gavvo. Their socials are going to be in the description. You can go check them out. If you guys want to check out any of my socials, you can go into the description and also check those out. I have a Discord server, Twitter, TikTok, and Twitch. But that's about it for this video, guys. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye, guys.